Hey there, it's Jennifer Batten, and you are watching a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it.
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Join Jake and his friends on a journey through pop culture of the past, where they interview professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and so much more. Who will they be chatting with today? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Happy here with us. Thank you for joining. As always, I'm your host, Jake Duffenball. Me today, as always, how it goes, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingle. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Hello, folks. How are you? How you doing, Jake?
Doing great, as always, Matt. Thank you for asking.
Yes, and we have a guest co-host joining us. You probably saw him in our episode with Kurt Heinecke, known for VeggieTales and other things. His name is Kev. Kev, happy to have you back. How you doing?
Hey, thanks. Good. Sorry. Happy to be back.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Delighted to have you back.
Yeah,
Yes,
thanks
we've-
again, Kev.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'm really happy to be here.
Wonderful.
yes, and as you can see by some of Kev's things in the background, we have a wonderful interview for you folks that should give a little bit of a hint as to who it is. But Matt, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about who the interview's with?
I would be delighted to, Chris. We've had a lot of musicians on our show before, but I'm not sure we've had any as big as this one. Since 1980, he has been the drummer for one of the most iconic figures in pop culture, Weird Al Yankovic. Today, we interview John Bermuda Schwartz. What is there to say? It's a lot. We talk about his influences and a ton of the albums, touring locations, including Madison Square Garden, which is coming up in the Weird Al Bigger and Weirder tour, kicking off next summer in June specifically. All this and more with John Bermuda Schwartz. Hope you enjoy it.
See you then.
Yes.
Hello everyone, welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive.
Yes, glad you're with us, folks. We are delighted to welcome our special guest, John Bermuda Schwartz. Welcome, John. How you doing?
Oh, thank you. Doing good. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Delighted to have you
awesome.
here.
Looking forward to having you here.
Delighted to have you. Yes.
Absolutely.
So to kick this off, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm probably best known for being Weird Al Yankovic's drummer forever. It's 44 years and counting, and that's kind of what I'm best known for. I do play with other bands here in the LA area, quite a few over the years. I'm in 3 other bands right now in addition to Al, and that's the main thing I do. I also am more recently known for publishing a bunch of the photos that I had taken of Al and the band on tour and in the studio and kind of behind the scenes doing all sorts of different stuff. And I think the fans knew for years and years that I had a lot of photos. I mean, some have been published and a lot of them have appeared online on weirdal.com and other places. But I finally put a bunch of them in print where they look really, really nice and, much better than they ever could look on a screen. And
Speaking of,
well, and there you go. Oh, cool. Oh, the box set. Very nice.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Very nice. That's thank you for grabbing that.
Yes, of course.
And we did a special edition of both books. Kev just showed the Lights Camera Accordion box set, and that has a couple of extra goodies in it. That's got, if I recall, it's got a set list from our
Should I pull
notorious.
these all out as you
Sure.
as you
The
list them?
set list that we did.
Sure.
We did a notorious gig
course
opening
it
for
is.
Missing Persons in 1982. That's the one, and
There it is.
and it's and that's Al's handwriting. That's actually the set list that we worked off of that night, and we were mercilessly. Well, we weren't booed off the stage, but we were booed. We didn't leave until we were done. And then we got a lot of applause when we left. It was like, yeah, get out. It's funny. Just last night, I met Raynon Bozio. Raynon is the son of Terry Bozio, drummer he was drummer with Zappa in UK and some other, but he was a drummer with Missing Persons. And Terry and I, once in a while, will, when we catch up, chuckle a little bit about how that was an uncomfortable night and kind of unfortunate. But it wasn't our audience, and that was that. So that's a copy of that set list. And there's another piece in there that is the basic itinerary, the basic rundown of the dates of the very first tour that we did with Dr. Demento in 1983. And that's on the letterhead of Al's manager, still his manager now, Imaginary Entertainment, and that's Jay Levy's company. And it's a list of the places that we played in 83, and more than half of them are still there, which is pretty cool. I mean, it was a lot of clubs and stuff like that, and 40 plus years later, they're still there. So that's sort of a cool deal. And so a drummer, musician, photographer, that's kind of what I do, kind of who I am.
Nice.
And
nice.
Also Bermuda, I've got number 226, so close to 27. So close.
Nice. No, very close. Very close. I got to tell you, and it shouldn't be a surprise that on both books, we did box sets for both books, numbered box sets. We did pull number 27, and that was Al's copy.
Nice.
So if I apologize to any of the fans that were really hoping to get number 27, and Al's
You're
got
forgiven.
it.
You're forgiven.
Okay, and he'll put it on eBay one day for $10,000, and it'll probably sell.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not surprised that's going to happen.
Nope.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. What was your childhood like, and how did you grow up?
Well, I was a pretty normal kid. Grew up mostly in Phoenix, Arizona, and where I also started learning to play drums. Actually, before I took drum lessons, I was 9 when I started taking lessons. I played accordion. And, they have like children's accordions, so they're smaller and there's only 12 buttons on the left side. And I actually played accordion before I played drums. I don't think I was very good. I think I got to like book number 2 of some beginning lesson kind of things. And I did surprise Al back in the 80s, and I picked up his accordion, and I just, from memory, I just kind of played something sort of poorly, and I think he was kind of surprised. And so not that you would ever see my name up on the marquee, but I think he was surprised that I could actually play something other than drums. So we moved to Los Angeles when I was 12, and I was in school bands and played in theater arts productions, and played with met some other musicians actually from another school. I joined a band with some guys from another high school, which I don't know how that happened, because back in the day we didn't have an internet or anything. There wasn't really any way to network or communicate. Everything was very physical. You had to know somebody, or you had to, I guess, go somewhere and meet somebody. You couldn't just arrange it on a laptop or a phone or something. So I'm not quite sure how we connected, but got together with them, and those were some of the guys that and I should add also that around 1970 or so, I started listening to the Dr. Demento show. And these other guys, a guy named Bill Turner on piano and a guy named Jeff Verona, who played flute at the time. And there was no bass player yet, just piano, flute, and drums. And we did add a bass player, and we recorded with some other horn players the Pico and Sepulveda song for the Dr. Demento ran a contest. That was early 1973. And we came in second place in that, actually, and which was pretty good. The doctor played, and I have a recording of the top 10 entries he played that night. And
Oh, wow.
and I don't think anybody was told in advance that they had, placed in the top 10 or who had won. And so when I heard the song come on, it was like, oh, that's very cool. I really didn't know if we were going to sing the very beginning. We sang Pico and Sepulveda, Pico and Sepulveda. It did sort of bad harmonies, and then it was instrumental from there. And he actually, because it was an instrumental version, he could talk over it, and he used it for the intro for his show for a while, which was very cool. So I think maybe later in 73 and in 74, our song was being played, at the top of the show every Sunday night. So it was pretty cool. One other thing, and we sent in, me and the guys and some other players sent in a few more songs over the next couple of years. Those also got played. So I was in the 70s, before it became a thing, me and my friends were having our homemade music played on the Demento show, and it was, that wasn't an everyday occurrence like it became later on. Another thing about and the Pico and Sepulveda thing, Al also sent in a version of Pico and Sepulveda. It was a contest, and he sent it in he didn't actually send it in. He gave it to the doctor. Dr. Demento spoke at his school at Linwood High School here in LA. And Al handed him, introduced himself and handed him a cassette, handed him his entry. And Dr. Demento didn't really have the heart to tell him that he'd missed the deadline. But he took the cassette and put it in the trunk of his car and forgot about it and sold the car at some point. And that tape had gone forever. I don't know if whoever bought the car even bothered to listen to what was on it, or if they did, had any idea what that was. But that was, both Al and I, the very first things we submitted to Dr. Demento were for that contest at the same time, which is sort of a little bit of synchronicity there. And I continued to play with other bands in LA and stuff. And a little bit later, I got a chance to meet Dr. Demento and come down to see him do his live show on Saturday night. And he invited me down an additional time to do an interview and talk about, since I was one of the, his show had become a lot more listener content and homemade music. He was playing a lot more of that kind of stuff. And he invited me on to talk about, what I was doing and the early stuff I had sent in. I was one of the first few people to get, our music played on the show. And Al was there that night. And so and of course I knew who Al was, and introduced ourselves. And he asked me to play on, he was going to perform a song that he had just written that weekend. And he was going to perform it live on the air. And he asked me if I would beat on his accordion case. It was very organic. And the rest of the sort of cast members had horns and squeakers and, sort of sang along, did other stuff. And we rehearsed it and all that. Another one rides the bus. So that was the night I met Al, was the first thing I ever did with him. I performed with him. And Dr. Demento made a recording of it. It was just in studio, but he rolled tape while we performed that. And that became the single. And actually that became on the version on the first album as well. And so, I mean, literally the night I met him, it was September 14th, 1980, was the night I began working with him. And little did I imagine that become much more. Another One Rides the Bus took off, not only on the Dr. Demento show, but the syndicated show that went around to almost 200 stations across the country. The song showed up on that show about 2 weeks later, because it was, that's a recorded show and then it's distributed. And the morning zoo guys, on Monday morning come in from 5 to 9 p.m., drive time, they call it. And that's a very important, people are in their cars and they're listening to the radio. They would listen, if their station ran the Dr. Demento show, they had a copy of it. They would listen to it to decide if there was anything wacky that they could play on their show. Well, they started playing Another One Rides the Bus. And so now we're being played nationwide in drive time to, be to a more mainstream audience, not just the Dr. Demento fans. And it just took off from there. And that was, I mean, My Bologna had been out already for almost a year, but really this Another One Rides the Bus recording is just, that kind of broke it wide open. And Al had called me, we exchanged phone numbers. He went back to school. He was going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, a little north of LA. And he called, he says, that recording, and he explained the whole thing, it's being played all over. And, I'm going to be back in town in January. I want to record another couple of things. I want to put out an EP and he had like a plan, and he had called me. I was going to be the drummer. And that's where that began. It is yet to end, which is great. There have been no hiccups. No, we haven't split up and reformed. There have been no change in the band members. This band, the current band, got together in 1982. And so they're there for the first album, the first tour, and beyond. And I assume we'll be out next summer when we go out again. And we're adding a few more people on the road this time as well, just for a little more noise and a little more vocals. We could certainly use some vocal help. Jim West has been carrying all the guitar duties by himself. So now we're going to have another guitar player to back him up a little bit. It's going to be very cool. It's going to be a very cool show. We're bringing back the full production, the costumes and the video, and we're playing some very cool places on the next tour, such as in Los Angeles, we're playing the Forum, which is a historic venue, and people like Neil Diamond will go there and sell it out for 2 weeks, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in New York City, we're playing Madison Square Garden, which is extremely cool. Billy
Nice,
Joel will go
that's
there
great.
and sell it out for
That's
150
awesome.
dates. So we're doing those kind. We're back at Red Rocks again. We're playing some more sheds around the country, which are open air amphitheater, like Pine Knob, Blossom near Akron, Ohio, Wolf
I'll be
Trap
seeing you
near
at Red
Washington
Hat.
D.C. Red.
I'll be seeing you at Red Hat, the Red
Oh,
Hat
cool.
Amphitheater. Yep.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Well, we will play good then for you.
All right.
You know what? We always do, but we'll play especially well for you.
I'm honored.
Oh, cool.
That's
Anyway,
lovely.
so and that brings us up to now. We're preparing for the tour right now, and not rehearsing yet, but we're each working on the stuff we need to work on personally, and it just keeps going. It hasn't slowed down, which is pretty good. We're playing some of the coolest venues and some of the bigger venues that we've done in a long time, and this is 10 years after our last album. And when I say last album, it probably was the last album. I don't know that if in 10 years Al hasn't even cooked up a single parody, it's unlikely that we could crank out 11 or 12 tunes every 2 or 3 years, anymore. So I think separating ourselves from the label was probably a good thing. Freed up Al to do what he wants or not do, what he has to do in order to put out an album to meet his contractual obligations. He can do what he wants and make sure it's the best thing. So we've done some cool polkas. The Hamilton polka based on the Broadway show. Polka Mania just came out this past June.
Yeah, that was so great. I love that.
Which kind of makes up.
Wonderful.
It's got literally 10 years worth of songs since we put out the last album. It literally covers all the stuff that came out.
Makes so much sense.
So it's sort of a little bit of a nod to what we have missed all these years. It's possible if we were still under contract, it's possible that some of the songs that wound up in Polka Mania might have actually been parodies or parodied by Al. I mean, that's conceivable, but it just gets bigger and bigger for Al and for the band. And that, again, that's without the benefit of, we're not promoting a new album. We're not really even promoting the biopic from a couple of years ago. I mean, that was a separate deal. That's not something we would do on tour. And it's been great. I mean, so that kind of takes me from growing up in Phoenix and learning to play drums and to Madison Square Garden coming up next year. And
that's awesome.
I don't know if it gets much better than that. I mean, it's hard to imagine an act like us, and I'm not saying we should be playing clubs or tiny theaters, but Madison Square Garden is a pretty cool place.
Oh, yes.
And there'll probably be, I think it's, there won't be people, I don't think, sitting behind us. It won't be like in the round. So they'll block off part of it, but I still think there's going to be about 16,000 seats available there.
Wow.
And the same for the Forum. They're very similar sized venues, about 19,000, something like that. And I think in the Forum, again, there won't be anyone behind us. There usually isn't when there's a band there. Because you don't need to see a band from the backside. And very often there's a backdrop, you wouldn't see them anyway.
Right.
So it's next year, the Bigger and Weirder tour is going to be very cool. And we're looking very forward to it.
Awesome.
That's great.
So am I, yeah. So this question sort of was touched on with the last one, thing for a little bit, then move on to what I really want to do or anything like that.
Well, what I did really want to do was be a drummer, be a working drummer. And I didn't decide that immediately, but I think by the time I was 12 or so, and we were in Los Angeles, and of course and I knew there were more musical opportunities in Los Angeles. I thought, I'd really like to be a professional drummer. That would be a very cool thing. And I probably didn't have any idea what that entailed. It certainly, it didn't occur to me that maybe there was touring involved. Videos hadn't really happened yet. There was a lot more to being a musician than just sitting behind the drums, but I didn't know that at the time. I just thought it would be cool. I enjoyed playing drums. I just thought that would be very cool. And I was lucky. I mean, it was a stroke of luck to meet Al and be where I'm at with him. But to be frank, I mean, I would be playing drums anyway. Maybe not quite as full time because it's hard to be a musician and make a living at it. And so I've been lucky to do that. But I would still be playing drums. I would be playing with the local groups that I'm playing with now. I was in bands before Al, and in other bands since Al, and continue to do that. just because I like playing. I probably don't need to. I don't do it for the money. I do it because I enjoy playing drums. And so I don't mind if I'm playing for 25 people or 2,500, or 25,000 somewhere. It's all just about playing drums for me. So that's really what I always wanted to do. I had a handful of day jobs, and one of them quite notorious was I worked for a company called Westwood One, which was the company that syndicated the Dr. Demento show. And it was Al who got me into Westwood One. When he came back and left school, he, of course, needed to have a job, and Dr. Demento literally got him to work in the mailroom at Westwood One. I mean, it was a favor, but they did that. And Al's a good employee. In fact, he moved up in the company a little bit and kind of didn't like what he did and went back into the mailroom. But and there were two guys in the mailroom, which is hard to imagine they would need two people in the mailroom for a company of about 30 people. But there were two of them in there, and he had called me up and he says, the other guy, whose name was Victor, who was an actor. I'm not sure whatever happened to him, but his name was Victor Stein, and he went by Victor Warren was his stage name. And he was walking down the hall to quit, and Al called. He says, "Victor's walking down the hall. Do you want to come down and apply for the job? They're going to need, they're going to be interviewing." I said, "Yeah." So I wasn't doing anything at the time, and I came down and I got the job, worked in the mailroom with Al, and pretty quickly started moving up. And I continued to move up, and I moved up and moved. And I guess I've been a very good employee, because when it came time to do the first tour, and I walked in there about September, October of 1982. And we had already recorded our first album, but there was no deal yet. It was still, the manager was still shopping it. So when the deal happened on Scotty Brothers Records, and the first album came out, and that first tour it was in May, June of 83. It was about a 3-week tour, and Al quit. But I guess I was going to quit. They said, "Well, you're coming back. I mean, you're not leaving, are you? I mean, you can go do the tour, but you're going to come back, right?" I said, "Yeah, if you'll have me." They said, "Oh, yeah, we'll keep it open." So I don't know what they did for those 3 weeks, but that was the easy one. They continued to do that every time there was a tour. 6 weeks, 2 months, 4 months, whatever it was. They let me go and come back. And one time I thought, this is just, I'm pushing my luck. I'll just quit and I'll figure out something else to do. And I quit, and they called me during the tour and asked if I would come back, and offered me a new position and a raise. And they said, if you come back, we'll hold it for you until, and this was like 6, 8, 10 weeks before I was coming home. And they wanted me back that bad, which was I was very flattered. Now that would probably never happen today in today's workplace. That would just, and it was no longer a favor, because this Al was gone, and I was at a different level. They weren't doing me a favor anymore. They really liked what I did, and I enjoyed being there. I mean, I really did enjoy working there, and I enjoyed the ability to come and go from there. And and a lot of my musician friends, a lot of musicians, talk about they don't talk about day jobs, that's embarrassing, or it gets in the way of their music or whatever it is. And I had it both ways, and it worked both ways. I wasn't sitting in the office lining up gigs, and I wasn't on the road, calling into the office and doing work. Actually, I did do that. I did deal with vendors and stuff like that. I called and did a certain amount of stuff, not on salary, mind you. And it worked out very well. And all of my musician friends were very envious, because they would have loved to have had a situation like that, where they could come and go from a job that was a legitimate, well-paying job. I mean, I was there 14 years. And finally, in 1996, left, and that was it. I mean, that was very clearly it. And they replaced me with my assistant. And when I came back to town, they said, "Well, what do you want to do now?" They didn't really fire me. They just said, we had to. You were gone 5 months. We had to put someone in your job, and I said, "No, got it." They said, "You want to work in production? What do you want to?" I said, "I'll let you know," and I never called them back, and that was. So I had a really good run there, and that was the last time I did something else other than playing drums.
Interesting.
And that's it. And really, the only other thing I'd done besides playing drums was this whole publishing the books thing, which was just an extension of my photography, which
Right.
I basically just shot pictures of everything from age, about 15 up.
Yeah.
And always had a camera with me. With Al, first time we got. Now I didn't have a camera the night I was in the at the Dr. Demento show. Not that first time. Someone else did, and they have pictures of me rehearsing Another One Rides the Bus with Al that I had never seen before. That I saw only after the first book came out. And I said, those would have been great pictures to put in the book. I mean, that would have been a historic. I don't even have pictures of that. But the next time I got together with Alan, it was January of '81, and it was to record another song to put on this EP with Another One Rides the Bus and a couple other things he had, and I took a couple of pictures that day. So I brought the camera in, and I had a camera with me maybe 99% of the time when I was with Al, anywhere. If he came over to my apartment and was doing something, I was right there with the camera. Of course, the camera's there already, but I would just take pictures of it, and he let me take pictures. He didn't think anything of it. There's very few pictures of him, doing that, or, don't take pictures of this. He was always very agreeable about that. And in the end, it worked out to be a very good thing. I mean, they used some of the photos that I took were used for promotion. I mean, and these, like on the video sets, they didn't really hire a set photographer. I mean, and I was the only one, we didn't have phones with cameras in them then. I was the only one wandering around with a camera, and I just snapped away pictures. And if I wasn't in the video very much, which typically I wasn't, I had a lot of time kind of behind the scenes. So there are a lot of shots of Al in action that I didn't need to be on the set. And I just backed up and got, the crew in there a little bit, very kind of behind the scenes looking stuff, not just shots of Al, that you could take from the video. I mean, I got shots that you couldn't otherwise get. And Al and his manager liked a number of the shots that I took, and I was never officially asked to come in and, you're going to bring your camera for, to shoot this. They just knew I would. It was just a given that I would show up with the camera. So for the next several videos, I was the only guy on set with a camera. And it was rare that somebody else had a camera. I mean, there are a couple of pictures of me with a camera around my neck, although chances are, and I carried two cameras, one with color film, with one with black and white. Chances are I gave him the one camera to take a picture of me while I still had the other camera on. So that's probably where those came from. And they were used for some other projects as well. There's a very cool book called Weird Al, I think The Book or something like that came out in 2012 by Nathan Rabin. And a lot of my photos, that book, yes, a lot of my photos in that book. The label the record labels have used some of the photos that I've shot. When the box set, the Accordion box set came out, there's a 100+ page book in that. Most of those photos are mine. I curated that. I went through, I proofread all the stuff for the album information and all of those. Found a serious mistake. If somebody wasn't doing that, it would have gone out and the fans would have gone nuts about, wait a minute, they credited these songs and they're not even on this album. I mean, they had put they'd copy and pasted the wrong thing into the wrong album. Anyway, the book is chock full of photos. And a couple of guys from Sony Music came out to the house and went through all my photos. And this was before I had my negatives scanned. We were literally dealing with little 4x6 photos, and went through and pulled a bunch of those. I scanned, physically scanned those photos. And that's what wound up in this big book. They wound up on some and a couple of other. Early on, the Authorized Al, which came out in 1985. I've got, I don't know, 20+ photos in that book. So early on, I was the guy that had the photos that were cool photos, except for the album covers and things like that, where they'd have pros shoot them. I always had those early photos, and so they culminated in these two books, which was with Al's permission. Of course, I ran all of the photos I wanted to use by him first, and he didn't. There were a couple that he was like, I'm not wild about that one, which was okay because I had way more photos than I needed. So I expected him, and the other guys too. If the other guys were in photos, I ran all of those photos by them to have their permission. I didn't want them to be surprised with anything. But really, it was to help me narrow it down because I thought they were all great, and I knew I couldn't have, 800 photos in the book. I knew I could only have 300, let's say. So I needed a little bit of help, and they weren't much help at all. I think between all of them, I was able to eliminate 5 photos. So it was, I turned in more than 750 photos to the publisher and said, you do it, he's got some editors in there who are major Al fans. And I said, you know what, let them decide which the cool photo, because I think they're all cool, but we can't make a book this thick. I mean, it's just not, nobody's going to buy a $150 book. And that's the coolest thing, because all of those photos then were taken from the negatives and properly retouched. And in the case of the negatives, sometimes there's more in the negative than you ever saw in the original photo. So you got to see full frame on some of these things in quality that never existed even before in the other books, because those were all taken from and only look so good. Taken from the negatives, they look as good as they possibly can, and very proud of all of those that ended up in there. So that's what's cool about these books. When people say, "Oh, you've got 1,000 Al photos online," I say, "Well, they're online, and they're designed to be this big." Back when screens were 640 by 480, and people were still on dial-up, I couldn't have like high quality large images. They had to be small, and a 320 by 240 photo was a quarter of the screen, on a screen that was this big. And that was what I did in the day back in the 90s when I started Al's website. And so those photos now are seen in just crystal clear quality, and just a very, very, I'm happy that Al let me do that. I'm happy that he let me just take pictures whenever, and he would mug for the camera quite a bit, as is obvious in a bunch of the photos in the book. So he was, he was very good about it. And since he let me do it, nobody else, the director or whoever, nobody else got in my face about, will you stop taking so many pictures, with your stinking camera. They just, I think in the end, Al and his manager and the label and some of the other guys in the band and stuff, I think they're very happy that I just snapped away and took pictures and documented everything. And that's another thing, is I document stuff. And, I have a list, and it's more than just a simple list, but a list of every gig I've ever done. I mean, obviously with Al, but every gig with every band I've ever been in, including all the way back to high school, including the nights I played the theater arts productions. Because I still have programs for that, so I have the dates on those too, and everything is in a database, and which has been sourced a few times by Al for, he needed some specific things. How many times did we play this place? I know we played this place a few times, but it changed names. What names did it change to? And I've got all of that stuff documented, and I've got, where possible, I've got audio and video of our shows, and not just Al's shows, but a lot of my bands. And those are all documented, cataloged, backed up several different ways. And I'm also sort of the archivist, not only for information about, the sessions we did and the recordings and all the other stuff, the gigs, but of the physical things as well. So I've got a complete collection of all of the merchandise that we ever had, which I assume Al does too. But I mean, I've got it put away and in mothballs and, archived, put away nicely. I've got, every time we would play a theater or a venue of any kind, and they had like a program or a sheet or something out in the lobby that had, would grab a couple of copies of that. So I've got all these programs from all these different venues and all these kind of one sheets, posters, anything that had anything to do with Al, and I could get my hands on it, I did, and I've got it, and I've got boxes and boxes and boxes. I've collected and gone out and sought out and bought product, CDs, LPs, 45s, cassettes, videos, DVDs, Blu-rays, Laserdiscs, whatever format, promo items, of all of the, not only just our albums, but any kind of compilations that had an Al song on it. Anytime there was an artist that covered Al songs or did a parody of an Al original and turned it into something else, I've got as many formats as were available of that. I've got those. I seek all of those out. Those are all cataloged. They're all in at least the U.S. releases, because the stuff that's outside of the country is a little hard to track down, but I've got a fair amount of that. But basically, I've got about I actually have about 1,700 items, recorded items, audio and video things from around the world, and
Wow.
that are either feature Al or are one of our albums or are related to Al, and even including getting a CD or an LP or whatever, if Al was thanked on it. If he's just thanked, and it's a little tangential, but his name appears on it, so I find it. I go out and get it, and that stuff is all. And I know that Al doesn't have all of that. Now someday he will. This will all get turned over to him someday, and or he certainly has access to it now if he wants it. But I think he's happy to let me manage it because it's just a ton of stuff. And like I say, I've got, and I know of more, but I have 1,700 or maybe 1,697 actual physical cassettes, CDs, LPs, 45s. There's a few other formats, DVDs, Beta, VHS, U-matic, the industrial ones, Laserdisc. There's another thing like a Laserdisc that was like a physical, it played like a record. I can't think what it was, but there was, I think Johnny Dangerously came out on one of those. I've just got all that stuff. So, I mean, I archive, I document, I keep track of stuff. So when it came time to put out a DVD of Al's videos and they wanted to put a little blurb about the date the video was shot, who directed it, maybe where it was shot, they didn't have, and Jay Levy became Al's director on a lot of these videos, and none of them had, I don't know why, they didn't have that information. They came to me, he says, you logged where we did all the videos and what days? I said, yeah. He said, well, we need that for the liner notes on this video DVD we're putting out. I said, okay, well, this. And I mean, it was cool. They came to me on that, like you would think somebody else besides me would have kept that information, but apparently not, which is cool. So when anybody needs to know something, if it's not already out there, if I haven't already given them the information, they come to me. And a lot of that stuff was what I based the website on. I began that website, I think, in 1995, maybe. And actually, it wasn't even called WeirdAl.com at the time. It was the Bermuda files. And it had maybe a couple of photos and a couple of lists of some things. And again, in 1995, there wasn't, it was only 15 years of history with Al, so it wasn't really that deep. But the site grew. As I learned more about domain names, I very quickly got weirdal.com, and I was smart because I got it both WEIRD, which is the correct spelling, and I got WIERIE because people think I before E, but that's E before I. That's weird. So I got both names, and we pointed the misspelling to the correct spelling, just because I mean it's a common. We see it all the time. Just like Yankovic, people actually spell it Yankovic sometimes. It's only so much you can do.
Yeah, it's common. Yeah.
But anyway, so that's the short version. Let me tell you the long version. Sit back. So no. So anyway, so that's kind of something else that's become kind of a side thing besides just playing drums with Al, is that I've sort of kept track of everything and have a lot of museum pieces, really. I mean, a lot of kind of very cool stuff. So that's when I don't know if any of you, and some of the people watching probably, I think in 2015 and 16 we went out on tour, and there was a VIP event, I think before and after the show, and part of that event for the people that paid for the VIP was they were able to, there were display cabinets with all these artifacts in them. And I think including Al's original accordion case, which I still own, the one I beat on that night, and a whole bunch of the stuff in these display cases came from my archive. The guy from the company that handled the VIP came out to my house and to the storage unit where we had a bunch of stuff, and we went through a bunch of the things from the archive, and a bunch of those things were mine, which is, kind of cool. And, I got a chance to make sure every night I made sure they were still there. They couldn't really put their hands on them, but, I just wanted to make sure nothing bad happened to anything that couldn't be replaced. And so that was very cool. So again, I was able to help on that. And that's kind of it. So I play drums, I take photos, I keep track of, Al's musical career and the gigs and stuff. And, which of course includes what I do as his drummer.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. That's, in a big nutshell, that's it.
Nice.
That's
So,
great.
who are some of your biggest musical influences or inspirations?
Well, growing up in the 60s, I mean, the Beatles, of course.
Oh yeah.
But I also, my parents, and we were from Chicago originally. And my parents had kind of like some big band albums and some jazz albums and some comedy albums, actually, Alan Sherman, stuff like that. But they had some Gene Krupa records, and he and Buddy Rich were like the top kind of most popular big band drummers. They were sort of household names, and so I was listening to Gene Krupa records as well as the Beatles, as well as a bunch of pop music on the radio. Beach Boys and Paul Revere and the Raiders and Mamas and Papas and Turtles and
Yeah.
Monkees and just So I really most of my influences, I guess, come from the '60s and the '70s. Music was evolving more and was a little more was a little harder. I started listening to a little bit of Led Zeppelin. I was appreciating the Stones more. Just listening to other different kinds of it. Jethro Tull. Some semi-progressive stuff. For me, it was very progressive. Yes, King Crimson, Gentle Giant, Genesis, stuff like that. But I mean, probably really still, I harken back to when I was learning to play and what I was listening to back in the '60s. And if it wasn't the Beatles or whatever I was hearing, the Stones or something like that, a big influence, and I learned later, was a studio drummer named Hal Blaine. And Hal worked with a ton of artists and even bands where they had their own drummer, but in the studio, a lot of these drummers were not kind of pop, recording ready. They didn't grow up kind of playing rock music. They were kind of jazz drummers, or maybe they played, they weren't ready to make pop records, or they just weren't ready to be in the studio. So there were a whole series of studio musicians here in LA and in other cities as well, Memphis and Nashville and New York City, that would do the recordings, and then the leaders and sometimes the guitar player, would play lead guitar or something like that. But then the singers in the band would sing over that, and those would be the recordings that went out. So Paul Revere and the Raiders, whoever they used on drums on the road, most of that was Hal Blaine in the studio. Beach Boys, Dennis Wilson, it wasn't a bad drummer, but he wasn't studio ready. So most of those recordings, most of those hit recordings, the early ones especially, that was Hal on drums. A ton of stuff. A ton of stuff. I mean, just a ridiculous amount of stuff. He did some you could almost name any artist, drummer or not, in the background, and Hal probably played with it. Not Al, but I'm the only
Right.
guy with Al so far. And I was very, very lucky and honored later to meet Hal, and became friends with him. And he was just such a great guy. And unfortunately, he passed away about 5 years ago. And at the ripe old age of 90, he had just turned 90. And he wasn't still playing down and play. And he could still play. He didn't have quite as much, wasn't quite as assertive as he had been in the past. But he was maybe the top studio drummer ever. And when that was a thing. Eventually drummers, learned to play rock and roll. They became more adept at going in, and they were more fastidious about their playing, and they could go into the studio and record stuff. It wasn't really necessary to have hired guns to do that. So the age of the studio musician, by the '80s, it was starting to kind of go away. It's different if you have a solo artist and they don't really have a band per se. Well, then you hire. There are guys who work primarily in the studio, but it's not an industry like it used to be, especially in the '60s and even into the '70s. I mean, Hal played with John Denver. He toured with him as well.
Oh wow.
Captain and Tennille. So he was working well into the '70s, but his heyday, I guess, was in the '60s. He was, among musicians, he was best known for doing most or all of the Phil Spector recordings. So a lot of the girl groups and I'm trying to think. I think "Then He Kissed Me," I think was a famous drum intro. Boom, 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 da, doom, 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 da, 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 and then he kissed. I think it's that song. He probably used that in a few other, but he's famous for that. He's famous for having a whole bunch of toms that he would do, all like these toms. He started that whole craze of that before anybody else did. And then, of course, everyone, big drummers started picking that up in the 70s and kind of waned a little bit by the 80s. But concert toms, there would be 8 drums. He actually only had 7, but there was 8 drums from a 6-inch drum to a 16, and they were melodic. I mean, so you could actually play. He had them tuned so you could play a song on it. He had 7 drums, 7 notes, and a scale. That's how he tuned them. But he was best known for that, for having those drums. And every producer back in the 60s, by the late 60s and into the 70s, wanted that sound. And there were only a couple of guys had those drums. He had 2 sets of them. And there were only a couple other guys that had them, and they weren't working like Hal was. Hal was the guy. So we go back to influences. Ringo and Hal were certainly my biggest influences. But whatever I listen to, I mean, when I hear music, I mean, I'm listening to the drums. I mean, I can hear it sort of as a whole, but I just zone in on the drums. And whatever I hear, I just kind of tuck away, and it goes into my memory bank. And someday, if I'm playing a song that sounds similar to that, I might use that beat. Or if there's a particular rhythm or a fill or something like that, I will steal that. I can't claim that I've invented any drum parts. I mean, it's really rare that people invent drum parts anymore. A lot of what I do is based on, I guess everything that I do is based on something I heard at some point on a record somewhere. And a lot of that does go back to the 60s. So, and it's still, most of that is still relevant today as far as the drummer is concerned.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So throughout Al's many albums you play drums on, are there any songs that stick out as any of your favorites?
I like them all, and for different reasons. I mean, I can't say that there are any that I wish I hadn't played on or shouldn't have been on an album or anything. I mean, I think they all, I'm proud of everything I played on. I do say that with every new album that I think as a band, we get better. And we get better at half of what's on the album are parodies, and the other half are originals. Often in the style of some of Al's favorite bands, or a band that may be popular that maybe is not parodyable, but their sound is, their vibe is. So that's going in and working on those sounds, and we got better as we went on, and as programming became a thing, as it did. Even by the late 80s, we were doing a lot of programming. And I did all the drum programming. I mean, I was always responsible for the drum part. If I wasn't playing, I was creating the parts, and later creating the sounds. I mean, first I used drum machines, and you get whatever sounds you get out of those. And later I was able on a computer to to design sounds. And that's an actual thing. Sound design is what happens when you just create sounds, like out of, digital sounds. That's an actual thing. And I became a sound designer, for drums anyway. And I got pretty good at it. And I do say that the sounds and the production, and that's Al, but I mean, we have a lot to do with that as well. The sounds and the production and everything was the best on our last album, on Mandatory Fun from 2014. And the parodies on that sound closer to the original songs than perhaps on any other album before that, where, well, this sounds about 98%, like Lady Gaga, for example. But on that album, I would say we're like 99.9% there. I would say if you were to hear those songs without the vocal, hear our music, hear their music, you wouldn't know. Most people would not know. And so I'm very proud of that. So I always say whatever our last album was, I like those songs the best because I did my best work on those. And on Mandatory Fun, every parody was programmed, and every original was played. In fact, we program some originals, like Dare to Be Stupid is an original.
Yeah, love that track. Yeah.
That was programmed out of necessity. I wouldn't have risen up to the level that Al needed me to for his agenda of parodying songs that are like cutting edge production, from some of the top producers out there. That's the stuff he goes after. And so we're chasing that. So if I didn't learn and grow and be willing to learn and grow and be good at it, I hope, Al certainly was welcome to get another programmer in, if he was concerned that I wasn't doing my job, because it's not just, well, you're doing the best you can and it's okay. It's his name on the line, I mean, he can't have a poor performance. So if he had ever needed to replace me, obviously he thought I was doing a great job. So that's good too. It's not just, maybe that's where I get that from. Maybe that's why I think I'm doing a good job, is because he apparently thinks I'm doing a good job, because I haven't been fired yet. So
Right. Yeah.
that's a good, of course, there's still, there's still tomorrow, but so
Right.
so far so good. I mean, he's given me all the information for the next tour, so I know I'm still good for that.
Absolutely.
That's great. I love Albuquerque.
I'm sorry.
Albuquerque, yeah.
Albuquerque. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long fast song at the end of the night usually. So we're up there playing for 90 minutes, and then suddenly we have to go into the fastest, longest thing in life. That's the equivalent of about 4 other songs, but it's nonstop. And it's the fastest song we play. There's no, because I have tempo notes on each of those songs. That is the fastest song we play. And that's hard. It's hard after you've already played for 90 minutes, and you have to do that for the next 12, 13, 14, 15 minutes, depending, we usually start it over.
Yeah.
And so we have to play it again. And one night we started it over, and we actually did play the whole song again.
Oh, wow.
He didn't just sort of pick it up and finish it. We played the whole song again.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and it was, we were like waiting for him, and it's like there's nothing we could do. He's the guy. He's the man up front. So
Yeah.
that was, and I'm sure I have that in my notes. I don't know off the top of my head, but I have it in my notes about the time we played Albuquerque all the way through a second time. So I could go and find that, if necessary.
Man, that had to be well over half an hour too, because the live version's like 18 minutes.
Well, that's because we started over. The song is like 12 minutes, and that's on the record. I mean, actually, it's longer than that because we throw in a whole bit in the middle. Anyway, it's
the extended donut shop part and all that.
Yeah, which of course didn't exist in the original.
Right.
The not the way it became later. We go through and we play about the first 10, 11 minutes thing again. It probably was between 25 and 30 minutes.
Wow.
And I'm going to look that up because I'm curious when that was. And but yeah, Albuquerque's, and that's a fan favorite. That's pretty cool.
Nice.
So I'm glad you enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just disappointed you didn't say "Don't Wear Those Shoes" isn't your favorite. Or maybe Attack of the Radioactive Hamsters from a Planet Near Mars.
No, I like that.
Bona fide classics.
I like that. I think we played that. I think we played that on the Vanity tour.
Yeah.
That's funny. We had a chance to play a bunch of stuff that we hadn't played as a band, really, like ever, because we never played a number of those originals live to begin with, and in the studio sometimes we just we're not all in there necessarily playing it as a song all at once as a band. Sometimes it's just bass and drums, and so when it came time to come back and play these songs, it's like this is like 30 years later, literally the first time we're playing this as a group, and we had to rehearse it. We had to work on it, because it's because we had never actually played together on some of those things. And then there's some others that we hadn't played in a long time. So we had to sort of, relearn and learn a number of songs to go out and do that tour. And a fair bit of rehearsal. Again, we had to work up endings for some songs that we'd never had to play before, that maybe on the record they faded out. And you can't really do that live very successfully. So, we would have to work on arrangements. Of course, Al does that, but it's not like we would just, he gives us a list of stuff when we go out and start touring. We actually have to work on things. And as we will with the Bigger and Weirder tour, with 4 more people on stage who haven't worked with us before.
Right.
And actually one of them has sung with us before. I will say that. And but the other 3 instrumentalists, multi-instrumentalists, they all play different things and all sing. If they don't have, like, say, a horn in their mouth or something, they're also singing. And if they're not playing something, they're singing and they're shaking a tambourine or something. So we're adding a lot more of the sound on stage that was on the records, and especially with the vocals. And that's why that's going to be such a cool tour, is because you're actually going to see everyone making noise up there and making sounds and singing and doing stuff and moving, and maybe there'll be some choreography. I don't know. They're not everybody just stands there all nice and stiff. I mean, I get to do that because I'm in a seat. I can't move, so that's fine for me. But everyone else, can walk around. They can gesture. Jim can gesture, and Ruben can, do a Liberace, whatever. There's all sorts of style that everyone else has. And you're going to see 4 more people on stage now. Venues I mentioned, it's really, now we had played Red Rocks on our own before. And we played a number of these venues before, but and honestly, the Bowl, or I'm sorry, we did 2 nights at the Hollywood Bowl, and that's a 19,000 seat venue.
Oh wow!
Now we didn't
That's
sell it out
cool.
both nights, but we did it certainly looked full to me, and that's a very iconic venue, as well. Greek Theater is a venue. That's only about 6,500 people here in LA. Oh, only. That's a good sized place, of course.
Yeah.
But so it's not like the New York and LA venues are the biggest venues we've ever played, but they're very cool. They're very iconic. Everybody knows what Madison Square Garden is. And and anybody on the West Coast knows what the Forum is, and I've seen many shows at the Forum. I've never been to Madison Square Garden, but I've seen I think the first show I saw at the Forum was Alice Cooper back in 1973, the $1 Billion Babies tour, with Flo and Eddie opening. Now Flo and Eddie were from the Turtles, and had been out with Zappa after that, and then they went solo basically and did stuff. And we actually, we opened for Flo and Eddie in New York City at the Bottom Line in 1983. The end of December, leading up to New Year's. Actually, we played New Year's Eve with them, and I think it was in '83, and that was really, really cool. And the Bottom Line in New York City is about a 400 seat club, famous, like the Troubadour in LA is a famous place. Not big, it's just famous. CBGB in New York City, same deal. So the Bottom Line in New York City was a very iconic, cool club, and it was sort of neat to be there and do that. And the last time it was kind of a smallish stage, and in fact it was on the first floor of an office. Everything in New York is tall, so there's always offices or apartments or something above everything at the street level, and there was structurally, there was a pillar in the middle of the stage, just kind of off to one side of the stage a little bit, right about where Steve J would stand on stage left. There was a pillar, and it was already not a very big stage. So we played the Bottom Line a couple of times, a few more times. And I think the last time we actually could fit on the stage was maybe 1992. And after that, our audience size, for one thing, sort of outgrew, even big clubs. We were already playing theaters and larger, and I think 92 was the last time we realized we were cramped. There was 5 of us now, not just the 4 of us that there were back in '83, and we realized that was probably the last time we'd be able to play Bottom Line. So and I mean we, as bands should do, as bands grow and build their audience, you outgrow certain places, and maybe you go back and you play a place because it's cool. Maybe Motley Crue goes back and plays the Whiskey, which is 400 or 500 capacity, maybe because it's sort of a cool thing to do. Not because they're trying to play in front of 500 people. They're just trying to do a cool little thing. So I don't know that we've ever done that. I don't think we've ever sort of gone back and played like a very intimate gig, which would be very cool for the fans. I don't know that we could. Well, with the amount of people on stage next year, there's no way we could fit on a smaller stage. But, that's, the Bottom Line, had we remained a small band without needing costumes and having to have risers for keyboards and drums and stuff like that, that would have been one of those kind of gigs that we would have gone back and just sort of maybe done a week there, done a little residency, just because it's sort of cool, kind of a nod to what, where we started early on. And, I think we may have played there on our very first tour in '83. We might have. I don't know. Actually, Kev, in the box that would show on that sheet, that would show if we played the Bottom Line in New York City. You'll have to remind me. But anyway, so that's
Somebody seems to have gotten into my copy because I cannot find it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was sort of an extension of the Flo and Eddie thing about seeing Alice
here it is.
about the forum and so that's so that might I've been in the forum several times, but so it was a bottom line on that sheet.
Yes, May 21st.
Wow. Okay, so that would have been the very first time we played
at
there.
9 p.m. and midnight.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Well, then again, we weren't 9 p.m. and midnight. Now, see, at that time, we were part of, it wasn't really our tour. We were part of the Dr. Demento live show. He would go out and do shows, and he'd play stuff that he couldn't play on the radio, that had to be censored or whatever. He would show like video clips and stuff, which you couldn't do on the radio at the time. I mean, there was no internet, so you couldn't stream things like that. And we were the live musical act part of the show, but of course we had an album out, so it tied in with our promoting the album. And of course, there were a lot of Al fans and the Dr. Demento audience, so it was a perfect pairing. So I don't know, we didn't do like full shows. We probably played 15 minutes. Maybe we'd come out twice and play like 2 or 3 songs each time, something like that. So for us to do a show at midnight meant that Dr. Demento would do a show at midnight, and that we would be on probably about 12:45 a.m.
Wow.
Wow. Anyway, that's we didn't do that anymore. but no, that was the first of a handful of times we played the bottom line. And again, that was one of the places we just outgrew, and which is okay. I mean, that's good that we continue to grow, and it's great that we're continuing to grow even now, even without really any new product, without any new songs to speak of. I mean, Al maintains a presence in a lot of different areas, and he's popular, and we haven't lost our fan base by any means, but it seems to be growing, and that's a good thing. Without any, or without very much new product to speak of, that's a good thing. I think that Al, that Weird Al, is onto something. So.
Nice.
Yeah, I think
it's going to pay off. I think someday it's going to pay off for him.
Absolutely.
I think it's great how Al doesn't really lose fans. His fans will introduce it to their kids, which then in some cases have even introduced it to their kids.
Oh yeah. We have little kids that are like and their grandparents in the audience, who came to see us 40 years ago. I mean, we've kept the fans and we've grown new fans. It's not just that they've all grown up with us. They're bringing in new ones, and not just their family, but I mean, young people are like the parodies as well as the young people 40 years ago did. I mean, so it's not just, oh, there's this guy who's been at this for 30 years now, he's some old guy. It's like, oh, this is funny stuff we really like. So, 8 and 10 and 12-year-olds would come out to see the shows, and those became, new fans. And they would grow up and they would have kids, and then they'd bring their kids, and so that's part of why the audience. I don't think anybody's ever sort of come along and really enjoyed what we did, and then suddenly like turned a corner and didn't ever want to hear us again or see us play or buy another album or watch another Roku biopic or whatever. I mean, I think once you're a fan, you're a fan for life, to a certain extent, maybe not quite as rabid, but you still come out and, maybe you don't see 10 shows on a tour, you come out and see 2, but you come out every time and, you see 1 or 2, maybe 3 shows. And that's great. And we love that. And we've come to know a lot of the longtime fans, and like Dave and Ethan, who do the 2000-inch podcast. Are friends of ours, have become friends of ours. There's other people that are major collectors. Kenneth Gwinnett in the Seattle area is a friend of mine. I mean, we're friends. Javier Valdez, also another collector in that area. There's a number of fans that have sort of transcended just sitting in an audience, just watching us, and we kind of vaguely know who we are, who they are.
I've got this watch right here that Ethan got for me at one of the Vanity shows, and it's got a little David Ethan business card in there. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Love
That's
that guy.
funny. There's still a bunch of boxes of those watches in the storage unit. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know what's going to become of them, But I mean, I've got one or two of each.
Hey, let me know. I'll take a couple boxes.
Well, they're probably going to want to sell them at some point. But those are those are kind of tucked away, just something cool,
Yeah.
because they didn't all get given away at that time. So that's so there's some cool little treasures tucked away in the storage unit that has all of our touring stuff, costumes, and all of that stuff.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah, I got to see the 2022 Vanity Tour. I got to see one show, and I was directly across from Steve, and we were making eye contact just about the whole show. And he really seemed to be getting a kick out of how into it I was. So that was really special.
We hang on. I mean, we appreciate everyone that's there. I mean, it's not just, they paid money and we can all live high on the hog now. It's not that. We're there because we enjoy doing what we do, and we know that the audience enjoys it, and we can tell. And even when there's someone new that doesn't know what they're getting into, somebody brought them in, or maybe they're just showed up on their own for the first time, and it's so cool to see. Sometimes their reactions are very obvious because they're even more surprised and excited about what's going on than people that have seen the show and kind of know and they enjoy it, but they're not seeing it for the first time. You can figure out who's really there or who's really into it because they're just discovering it for the first time. And that makes us, we feed off of that. I mean, we do, it's not, we can see into the audience. I mean, it's not the lights are kind of in Al's eyes, but we're a little out of that, and we can see, pretty far into the audience, first 15, 20 rows. And we see the reactions of the fans, and it's great. I mean, we're very happy that the fans are happy. I mean, that's, we're doing our job.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. So for the next question, I was wondering if there's any difference in how you approach the drumming between parodies and originals, and
Well, on the parodies, the job is to do what's on the original song that we're parodying.
Right.
There's no interpretation. We don't even rehearse. On the songs that we do play, that we used to actually play, that were live, we didn't rehearse them. There was no need to rehearse because we knew what the part was.
Yeah.
We would literally play them for the first time in the studio. We would run through it just to make sure we actually could play together still. But we didn't get together and rehearse them because there was nothing to work on. Really, we knew the parts. Maybe 90% of the original songs are based on another band's sound. Sometimes you can almost pick out a specific song. So maybe there's some notes different, but you say, "Oh, that original sounds like this band's song." And it's like they must have kind of been going after that. When Al says, "Yeah, we're listen to these 4 or 5 songs and kind of get those are the vibes we're looking for," and technically it's an original song. I mean, it's a new Al composition, but with a nod to some other things. So we have to get into those players that other bands players' heads about what would they play. What kind of drum beat would this drummer for Craigslist, which was an original based on a couple of Doors songs. It's like, okay, well, if Al wanted to be super authentic, and he called up John Densmore, Doors drummer, and who's an LA guy, and said, brought him in, and said, okay, play what you would play if this was a Doors song, but without actually maybe doing necessarily a Doors lick, but your interpretation of what this would be if this was, a new Doors song presented to you. And I have to be in that mindset. We all have to be in that mindset. Is what would that band play if they were playing this Al original song? What would they do to it? So Al gives us, he either tells us or used to send us cassette tapes, actually, of several songs. It's like, we're trying to get the vibe of these kind of songs. Don't do this exact guitar line, or Steve, don't do this exact bass line, or things like that. We're going to get sued. But this is we want it to sound like that band doing my song. And that's the mindset. So it would be, I would, and we would get together and we would rehearse those because we had to massage certain parts, and we had to run all of those by Al too, who would be hearing us play for the first time. The method for the whole procedure on doing the originals became Al would do his own recording of it. It would be an Al demo. Uh, Originally, it was just maybe him and a keyboard or him on an accordion, whether there was accordion in the song or not. He would be playing the melody and singing the lyrics and giving us the vibe and the arrangement of what it is. So we would have a little something to go on. And eventually he started making proper recordings. He would have, drum machine tracks on it. He would make pretty reasonable songs and for our benefit. So there would be an Al demo. Then he'd send that to us. We would sort of mentally chew on that a little bit, chart it out as we needed to, schedule a rehearsal, and we would usually do 4, maybe 5 of the originals at a time, sometimes all 6 of the originals on an album. And so we would get together, rehearse, could listen to that. And that was, the band demo was very often very, very, very close to what the album version ended up being, meaning we nailed it. If we got it at the rehearsal / band demo stage, that meant we got it right. And I dare say some of the demos rival the album tracks. They're that good, because we're not really. I don't want to say we get nervous in the studio, but there's a different vibe when you go in and play in the studio versus when you're sitting somewhere and you're just sort of casually playing and it's still fresh and new in your head and it's and you're not under the gun. The red light is not on. You don't have red light fever, they call it. And
right,
some of the
like you kind of have to make sure the original artist is all right without getting to do the parody and all that stuff too.
Well, well, the parodies are like a separate thing, and that's a different. Al doesn't have to get any kind of permission when we're doing a song that sounds like another band, but it's legally, technically not one of their songs. It just sounds like, we were not the first band to sound like other bands. There was a band in the '60s called the Knickerbockers, and they did a song called Lies, and people swore it was the Beatles. They swore up and down it was the Beatles. And it wasn't, and later, it wasn't like even secretly, it really wasn't the Beatles, but they had nailed that sound, and they sold a bunch of records because they sounded like, maybe that's why we sold a bunch of records, because we sounded like Devo on that album, or stuff like that. Anyway, but again, the mindset on the original is we got to sort of get in those players' heads, and if it's a band where the song we're going after is all programmed and stuff like that, I have to go after those kind of sounds, and that's where the sound design comes in. I mean, it really comes in with the parodies, because we are parodying cutting edge production out there, and we're chasing guys that are just like inventing things out of their heads, and I'm trying to like figure out what they're doing and where they get these sounds and how many sounds they have to put together and layer to make a new sound. I mean, a lot of the snare drums you hear on a lot of the recordings over the last 20 years are not even, some of them are not even snare drums. Some of them are not one sound. I mean, some of them are, sometimes a snare drum has a clap put onto it, and you can't really quite tell that it's a snare drum and hands clapping, but it is, because I can hear it. I listen to it and I study it, and it's like, if I put a hand clap on a snare drum, it would sound exactly like that. And I said, let's see, it doesn't have quite the attack. Well, maybe there's a rim click, and put that on there for a little bit of a sharp sound. I think I hear a little bit of that there. So I put these 3 sounds together, and all of a sudden, wow, I have the sound that they used on that. I don't know if that, so I go with that. And there was only one time I was foiled, and that was on a song called Inactive, which is a parody of Imagine Dragons' Radioactive. And I couldn't, I got all the sounds together. I thought I work on the arrangement first, and I got all the sounds, and I could not get the snare drum sound quite right. I got about 90% there, which is not good enough as far as I'm concerned. I mean, maybe it would have got past Al, but not me. And and we work on this stuff at home. So I wrote to the Imagine Dragons drummer, Daniel Platzman, and I didn't assume that he programmed it, but I thought he would maybe have access to tell me what the sound was, or maybe even give me a sample. That would be ideal. And I sent him off an email, and I hadn't heard anything, and we're getting close to having to present our parts and bring them in the studio and stuff. I said, well, I guess I got to just go with one of the sounds I had cooked up before, and we'll just live with it, whatever. And I went to the computer to start compiling it all. And I got an email, and he had the guitar player send me like a whole section of the snare drum track. And when I could hear that soloed, I was hearing stuff that I could not hear in the song itself. As I never would have got this. Like they had like a reverse thing and a filtered thing, and the reverse thing didn't go all the way up to the hit. There was a little gap, and then it hit, and there was these filters going on, and just I don't know what it was, but he sent me the actual snare from the song,
Oh,
the
wow.
actual parts. So I laid that into the files, and I sent them off with a note, and I said, the snare drum is the snare. Don't compress it. Don't EQ it. This is really the snare from the record. Don't mess with it, because this is, just take this, if nothing else, take this file of the snare as is. That's the part. That's the sound. And it was very, very cool. And him and the bass player came to see us in Vegas when we played there the next time. And I got a chance to meet him in person and thank him in person. But that was very cool. That's the only time I really had any trouble sort of getting a sound, I should say. And I was and it's the only time I've reached out to anyone for some help on a part or a sound. And I was very thankful that he came through, that he was able to do that for me. So that was sort of a cool thing. That was very cool.
Nice, nice.
That's great. Since you kind of now on the kind of the parodies type of topic, some of the parodies I just love is of course I'm sure a lot of Weird Al fans will definitely join me talking kind of mention it. White and Nerdy, and of course the Michael Jackson's parodies, Fat and Eat It. That's so great.
And the eBay parody too.
Well, those are all classic. I mean, they're classic Al parodies. I mean, they're classic songs on their own. But
Right.
they're what Al does to them, they become his song. I mean, I had to think for a second about the Backstreet. So I Want It That Way.
Yeah,
eBay is what I hear.
Yeah.
That's Al's song. It's not just it's gone beyond Backstreet. I mean, it's just now it's Al's song.
Because how the song is just kind of like so different. As like, okay, but it's kind of, but the only difference is just kind of same sound from the original song. But other than that, the lyrics are all.
Oh yeah, it's a whole other thing. It's not
Exactly.
It's not like it's making fun of the song. Not in the way, say, Achy Breaky Song made fun of Achy Breaky Heart and Billy Ray Cyrus to an extent.
Right.
I mean, and Al really didn't take very many pokes at songs or the artists, but that was an obvious one. And Billy Ray wasn't extremely happy with it, but he didn't write the song. So it's not like Al had to go with him and say that I'm doing this song and here are the lyrics and this is, it's not like it had to be run past him in the first place, because it probably wouldn't have made it, because it really is a stab at the song that, that broke him as an artist, that was, his biggest hit. So there was that one. But yeah, when Al does a parody, it becomes an Al song. And it's not just, that's like Michael Jackson singing different lyrics or dressed up in a fat suit. No, it's a big fat Al, and that's that song.
Yeah.
It's become its own thing, and that's cool. And I think that's the success, and that's why we can, years after our most recent album, 10 years, why we can go out and play some of the biggest, the venues that we've ever played. That's cool. I think that's pretty good. That's thanks to the fans. If the fans weren't there, we couldn't do this. We're not doing it just to play in front of an empty house. We do it because we know the fans will come, and they love it, and we love that they love it, and hopefully we're going to keep doing this for another 44 years. maybe not 44, but we'll see.
Yeah.
That's great. That's wonderful. Since you kind of already talked about the touring locations you've got to do with Weird Al over the years, can you kind of I'm kind of curious, do you have some of your favorites got to play with on Weird Al?
As far as with Al,
like favorite touring locations.
Oh, venues or cities. I love Australia. I love England. I love Canada. Uh, go where it's like, you know what, we never need to come back here. You know, we shouldn't. It's a terrible place, or it's a bad venue, or the audience didn't show up, or whatever. Everywhere we go is a really good feeling. And when we have some time off, you know, we typically play 5 nights a week. So in theory, we have a couple of days to hang out wherever we're at on those couple of days. You know, we get out and explore a little bit. And there's certain places I like to go to more than others. I like Toronto. I like Vancouver. I like New York City. I like Chicago. I like San Francisco. I like Seattle. I mean, I like some of the bigger cities, but it just sort of depends. You know, it's I think we like most places. I don't think there's anywhere that, you know, I don't ever want to go back to. You know, even if we're sort of in the middle of nowhere, which sometimes we do these gigs like in places that are pretty far away from any major cities. You know, it's maybe we'll do a county fair somewhere, and it's pretty far off the beaten path, and I enjoy that too. I sometimes enjoy that too. That's, you know, it's been, you know, in almost 40, well, in more than 40 years of touring, it's been great to be able to see the country and see other parts of the world, Europe and Australia. And you know, we did a fairly comprehensive tour through Canada in 1995. We did about 5 weeks worth of shows all across the country up there. I think I like it all. I mean, I really enjoy the places we go. And but I do have, I mean, some of the bigger cities are some of my favorite places. I really like London in Great Britain. Uh, we didn't go there with Al, but along the lines of London, my wife and I many years ago had gone there, and we went up to Liverpool and did the Beatles tour, did one of the Beatles tours, and that was very, very cool. I enjoyed that. But I like the places we go. You know, I like maybe I just like being driven there and get off the bus and you know, we'll see you at sound check, and you know, do what you want for the next 8 hours. You know, here in Seattle or Butte, Montana, or St. Louis, or wherever we are. I usually enjoy wherever we are.
Nice.
So, you know, I mean, I guess I have favorites, but I like them all. That's sort of like with Al's recordings. I mean, there are probably some that stand out for me, but I basically like them all.
Nice. Do you have any methods or steps that you take to sort of stay practiced between tours?
Well, I play with other bands, so I keep in shape physically and mentally. I mean, I enjoy playing with other musicians. I enjoy playing drums, and it's not the same to just sit in the house and play on the drums by yourself. That's not the same thing. I mean, music is a team sport for me, and you know, not playing them a lot, and it's not like I can sit and play solo guitar and that's the end of it. You know, that's the whole package. It's not that way with drummers, at least not the way I drum. And so I keep busy and keep in shape and keep mentally fit by playing with other bands. And I'm sort of lucky that I have 3 different bands to play with, and that none of them work so much that I can't do another gig with the other band. I mean, they don't seem to get in each other's way. In fact, until very recently, I was playing with a 4th band, and I was subbing regularly for their drummer, who was playing in other bands as well, and I guess thought nothing of going off and taking these other gigs, but knowing that this band had a couple of guys that could come in and play, and I was always first call. So I did my last gig with them just about 3 weeks ago, and they are essentially breaking up. The leader of the band is moving, and so they got a couple of gigs left, but they did their last gig with me as a sub about 3 weeks ago, and it was very nice, and it was kind of bittersweet because I really enjoyed working with them, and still between the 4 bands, it was very rare that I get called for a gig and I'd have to say, no, I'm already booked that night. You know, just if I play once, maybe twice a week, that's plenty. You know, that's enough. Yeah. And so between tours, that's how, you know, I can step right back in and I'm up to speed. So
nice.
Interesting. So moving on from in between working with Weird Al, you also play with other LA-based artists, including religious comedy group ApologetiX. What is it like playing with them, and how does it compare to playing with Weird Al?
Well, they're not an LA band. They're a Pittsburgh band, actually, I think, and they I did some recordings with them. We had a day off in Pittsburgh, and I'd been in touch with them, and they called me in and had me play. I think I recorded 6 or 7 songs that appeared on. I think it was Biblical Graffiti, which was
Yeah.
I think that was it, which was set up. It looked like sort of Pink Floyd The Wall. It was like a brick wall or something with biblical graffiti scrolled across it.
Yeah.
And I played on 6 or 7 tracks on that, and did okay. I mean, it's different with Al because not saying that I'm playing less meticulously because it's not Al, but Al is very meticulous as an artist and once he became producer as a producer. And honestly, the rest of the band is very meticulous too. And that's why we gel so well. That's why this band has stayed together. It's a good unit because we're all on the same page in terms of how we approach what we do. This is not a casual, stuff is highly produced and it's got to sound right. It can't be loose. It's perfect, but it's got to be almost perfect. And it's got to sound good. And more than that, and especially in the case of the parodies, which help sell the records and help sell Al's name at any given time, they have to sound like the original, which are very highly produced and very meticulously produced. So we're all on that page. It wasn't quite that stringent with ApologetiX. I'm not going to say it was loose. I mean, they're all pros, all good guys. And it was really cool to do that. And I played there, and I've forgotten his name. I'm sorry, but I played on his drums. I mean, they had them set up in the studio, and it was just very cool. It was a day off, and went in and worked with them. They bought me lunch, and it was very, very cool.
Yeah, I've got several of their CDs. I love ApologetiX, but obviously Al will always be at the top of the chain.
Well, and of course, and they're big fans of Al. I mean, that's it's not like Al was the first to ever do a parody of something, but he sort of opened that up once he became a fixture. That opened it up for a lot of other budding parody artists and bands to come out, and the outlet being through the Dr. Demento show. I mean, really, in the 70s, that wasn't not until about the mid 70s. You didn't have that outlet. Eventually, and Al was at the forefront of sending in homemade tapes, and actually, regularly getting them played. By 75, 76, Dr. Demento was starting to open up to independent talent and comedy music. And the show became more focused on that and started to draw out more of those people, those musicians who were of that mind, and they started contributing. And ApologetiX was along those lines, but with a very Christian theme at the same time. And they were all real nice guys. They weren't all like making me pray and do all sorts of stuff. They were very casual guys. But they are religious. They're pretty serious. There's no swearing around. In fact, there's no swearing in the Al camp either, but we're just, we're just not of that mind so much. But it was very cool to work with them. And I remember, I can't think of all of the songs I did. I remember we did Enter Sandman, which was Metallica. Yeah, Metallica. And I don't know that I'd ever heard the song before. I mean, they played it for me there in the studio, and I was kind of making out a chart, as we went. So there was no rehearsal to speak of. I came in that day and they told me what I was doing, and that was it. But it was very, very cool to work with them. And Jay from the band still, we still email once in a while, and keeps me apprised if they have a new issue coming out, and one of those songs I played on is on that. He lets me know because he knows that goes in the archive as well. But that was sort of cool. That was everyone else is pretty much local to Southern California, and some of them have been fairly long associations. There's a blues rock band I play with called Idle Hands that I've been with for almost 20 years. That I play with. It's just a cover band. We do 1 gig a month, and that's good enough for everybody. We do covers from the 60s, 70s, 80s, some 90s. And I've been playing with them 12, 13 years. And there's another guy I play with, and I've been Rip Masters, R.I.P. Masters. And he does Americana, which is rockabilly, blues, country, a lot of originals, some covers, well-known, some obscure covers. And we go out and we play some casinos and do some clubs. And he goes to Europe and does some stuff once in a while. And really enjoy working with him. And he lives close by to me. So sometimes we carpool to a gig, and good guy. I wouldn't be with him at 43 plus years if he wasn't. You know what? If none of these guys were good guys, I wouldn't stick with them. It's got to be fun. It's got to be
Right.
fun
Yeah.
for me. And as long as it stays fun, I'll do it. And as soon as
Absolutely.
it stops, if Al ever stops being fun, I'm going to ask for more money, and then I'll feel better. Actually, I won't feel better, but I'll. No, you know what? I can't imagine that it ever would stop being fun. It's never not been fun,
Right.
and that's why
Yeah.
the same guys have been doing it for all these years. I mean, it's fun. It's fun for everybody. It's fun for Al. I don't think he needs to go on the road to make money. He goes on the road because he enjoys it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the best reason. And that's why he's got a smile on his face when he's up there, because he's having a good time. And he's not mad to be up there, because he's got to make a car payment or something. It's just he enjoys that. And I think the fans know that.
Exactly. So before we get to the last couple questions here, of course we got to talk about the upcoming Weird Al tour that's happening, the Bigger and Weirder tour. Of course, you mentioned earlier about the 4 additional members kind of being added to the roster here. Can you kind of talk about what fans can expect with this future tour?
Well, we've over the last couple of tours, we've changed things up a little bit. We did the Vanity tour, the Unplugged tour, or the No Frills tour, as we called it, where it was just the 4 of us on stage, 5 of us, no videos, no costumes, just literally just the band up there just playing, and all originals. We do a little parody medley at the end, but it was basically all originals. Every night was a different show. We chose from about 40 plus original songs, and Al would put together 16, 17 of them for that night. And he had all of the set lists, and there were 122 shows. And he had 122 set lists put together and made sure that they were all, there was at least one thing different, that they were markedly different. If we did 2 shows in the same place, one night after the next, he would make sure that we didn't repeat any of the songs, because he knew a lot of the same fans had come back to see the second show. And we would do the other half of the songs that we didn't do the first night. And the parody medley stayed the same, but that was a very small part at the end. But he would make an announcement about that, a funny announcement about every show being different except this one song at the end. So if you were here last night and you saw this song, you could leave now. And so there was that tour, and we repeated that again in no, actually, well, I'm sorry, we did that in 2018 first. We did it in 2022, where there were 122 shows. 2018 was 76 or 77 shows. In 2019, we did the orchestral tour, and we brought back the videos and some costumes, but the wasn't the focus, but I mean, the orchestra was there, and they played behind every song, whether or not there were horns and strings or whatever on the original version. I mean, some of our songs had horns and strings. They were playing behind "Smells Like Nirvana," for example. So they were there and
Yeah.
did the whole show with us, and so that was another kind of a different treatment. That was pretty cool. We played with some very good orchestras. We didn't travel with those people. We carried the conductor, who obviously needed to know the show, and they would assemble. They would either hire a local orchestra, or they would hire a bunch of people to come in and play those instruments, 30, 40, 50 people, sometimes more, and they would rehearse the show that day to a recording of us to a show we had done early in the tour, so that we didn't have to do an entire show for their rehearsal and then come back and do another entire show, because that's a little hard on all of us. We're a lot more physical than violin players and stuff like that. And Al coming out and having to sing a whole show and then come back and sing a whole other show. So they would rehearse to a recording of us. And so we literally played with them the first time when the show started. That's when we would play together. And it worked out very well pretty much all the time. There really weren't any train wrecks or issues or there were no terrible players or clams or clunkers or whatever. That was a pretty cool tour. Came back and did another Vanity tour, the return of the Ill-Advised Vanity tour, and that was in 2022. And in 2023, we did the same. And again, just us on stage. We took that to Europe, and we went back to Australia with that as well. Coming up, Bigger and Weirder will return to the production. So we're going to have video. We're going to have the costumes. There'll be some more people on stage, so there's more of a live experience. Instead of me stepping on a pedal to play a tambourine, and it's just kind of, you hear a tambourine, but you don't see anybody with it. Now there'll be people to play tambourines, shakers, to do a bulb horn in the polka medley. I mean, there'll be people to do all of this stuff live. It'll be a bigger experience. I don't know if it'll be weirder, but it'll be a bigger experience. Might be
awesome.
weirder. We'll see. But that's what, we've returned to the show, the full production, and then some. And we're adding these 4 additional players and singers. And the good news about having more singers on stage is I'm not going to have to sing anything, because I'm not a singer. And Al begrudgingly gives me parts to sing, knowing that, well, it's not going to be good, but it's better than nothing. And now he's actually got real singers. So I have very few vocal duties on this tour, and usually just shouting or doing some other stuff. Anything that's non-melodic, I can do. I don't have any melodic agenda or inclination or anything. I just want to play drums. So
Yeah.
That's one benefit for me, is that I don't have to think about vocals, and therefore it's going to sound better without me trying to sing. So it's going to sound better. It's going to look better. I think the experience is going to be bigger. I don't think it'll be weirder. I think it'll be better. So
Awesome.
Well, with me there,
Wonderful.
it'll be weirder.
okay.
That's great. Yeah, looking forward to the tour next year. So, of course, aside from the upcoming tour that we just talked about, can you share anything else you're currently working on?
With Al?
Or just in general.
Anything in general.
No, not that I can't share it. I'm just not working on anything. I just, right now I'm preparing for the holidays. I'm preparing for the tour. There's no other projects really going on. I'm sort of letting my bands know what my schedule is for next year. Now that we published the dates, I can say, you know what, I just don't expect me to work in this like 4-month block or whatever it is. And so I'm basically, even though the tour is several months away, I'm in that mode already. I'm already gearing up. Everyone, we've all got recordings of the songs we're playing. We've all got the charts, of the vocal parts. And it's good for me to look in there and not see my name on one of the charts. So everyone's got the stuff they need to work on and are probably working on. That's kind of what I'm doing. And I do a few other things kind of behind the scenes for the tour, and I'm working on that kind of stuff. But that's it. There's nothing else kind of lurking really for the last several years. Once I got past the books, the back-to-back photo books, I just play in other bands, play with Al, and enjoy the time off in between. And
Nice.
and life is good, and I'm very lucky, very very one of the lucky ones, because a lot of guys would love to be in my shoes, and I know how lucky I am to be in that position. So I don't take it for granted one bit. I'm very grateful for it.
So Kev, take us home with the last question, my friend.
All right. So this podcast being called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, what does nostalgia mean to you? What comes to mind when you think of nostalgia?
Oh boy. Well, last week I went out and had a nice lunch at a good restaurant. Very nostalgic about that. Oh, you mean in the bigger picture?
Yeah,
like
on a grand scale.
time?
On a grand
Okay.
scale.
Yeah.
I guess, and it has a lot to do with, being young and everything being new. I guess the 60s, anything from the 60s is very nostalgic for me. So, because I was learning and growing and young and receptive and didn't really have any responsibilities yet. And school wasn't any kind of a pressure. There was no high school yet for me. It was the 60s, a lot of nostalgia for things from the 60s. And a lot of us, from our childhood, but specifically the 60s, musically, TV shows, music, I guess, the fact that that's when, my drumming, pursuits started. I would say, nostalgic for things in the 60s. I still enjoy 60s music. I still listen to the Beatles and Stones and Monkees and Turtles and Paul Revere and the Raiders and Mamas and Papas and the Association and Hendrix, if I need a little bit of harder 60s kind of stuff, Stones. It's just the 60s has a lot of nostalgia, and the pop culture of the 60s. is big for me still.
Nice.
That's
Gertz and
great.
done.
Thank you so much.
Well, Bermuda, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a blast.
Well, you're welcome. Let me know when it's posted.
I'll let you know.
Absolutely.
Yes, we'll do.
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
Yes, enjoy
Well,
the
take
rest of your
care.
day.
Yeah, this
Nice
was
to meet
awesome.
you all.
Thanks
All right,
again.
take care.
as well.
Yeah,
Thank
see you in
Bermuda.
July.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
It's goodbye from us as well. We absolutely enjoyed our time speaking with John Bermuda Schwartz. Links to his website and social media will be in the description down below for
And-
people who want to connect with him.
And his books as well. And those who want to check out and want to look, get a read of his books and all that's in the description down below.
And
Yes.
dates for the tour coming up.
Yes.
In summer of 2025. So it's a big tour. So links will be in this description for that as well. Thank you,
Yes.
Kev, for coming back. By
We're-
the way,
Yes, of
Very
course.
happy
Thank
you're
you guys
back.
for having me. I really
Yes,
appreciate
of
it.
course.
Yes.
Indeed.
It's
Our pleasure as ours. Kev.
yes.
Again.
Keep a lookout for more wonderful interviews coming your way. As always, what do you say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Be sure to follow Jake and the Happy Nostalgia team on social media, check out our website, and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.